Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Passion Within. We've got Brian from Earth Growers, and I think it's Maisenbacher, but I'm not sure, and I don't want to louse it up too bad. But Brian is a wonderful person that is literally an Earth Grower because he's got things around the planet that he is working on with different farmers, all with natural farming techniques, showing people that they can make a difference themselves in the world. And I just want to thank you so much for that, Brian, because you're a man after my heart because I'm trying to add biology back into the globe. And brother, you're actually doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great intro. It's Maisenbacher is the way you say is the way my family says it, but
Okay.
you know you get used to it.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Stoked to have a cool conversation.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I know we talked a little bit about some of your passions a few days ago, and I was just, you know, so happy that someone would reach out like you have to want to come on to share the special things that you are doing, not only for people in North America and California, but around the world, and how you are trying to give so much back. But let's talk a little bit about your past. Like, really, when you think about it, most people on a journey like this, they find a starting point, something that was a catalyst to bring them on this journey. What would you say, my friend, was your catalyst?
Um, Started when I was really young. I went to a Montessori school and we had a garden there. So we started planting seeds when I was in like preschool out in the garden. And at the house where I grew up, my had planted a lot of fruit trees on the property before I was born. So I grew up picking fruit off of trees and planting seeds in the garden at school and working in the garden at home with my mom. So that's really where it started. But I didn't get super like serious into until I was probably 16 years, and a buddy of mine and I, we started a really big compost farm. And
Oh, oh, hold on a second. I'm gonna have to adjust your mic settings because we're definitely getting. Okay, let's try that. I just clicked on the echo cancellation on your mic. So pull them back out. I changed the echo cancellation on your mic. So let's try that.
okay,
No, we're still. Yeah.
no problem. But
If it wasn't for problems on a live stream, we would never have live streams.
that's part of it. But a buddy of mine, we started this really big compost pile. He had his mom gave him the whole backyard, and we started getting big piles of horse manure. They were getting dropped off, and we were turning all of that into a big compost pile. And we were going over to coffee shops around our neighborhood, and this was all we're 16, like making a compost pile that was probably 100 feet long, 3 feet high.
Okay, I
And
have to ask. At 16 years old, whatever made you guys want to do a compost pile, especially that size?
right. Um, well, we were raised on the internet. So we were looking at YouTube videos,
Right?
and we came across a YouTube video of a guy named Zeke the Sheep, the compost guru of Altadena, California.
Okay.
And this guy speaks in rhyme about compost in this really inspiring way. And for some reason, we watch this video and go in the backyard and we start shoveling the horse manure into a pile. It's like, and it was a really profound moment because it really was a catalyst of everything I'm doing now.
Right.
Because with my good friend, we were learning to compost together, and we were learning about how that process worked, and it showed us a lot of deep lessons. And from there, I we made a big garden. I'm
Right.
sorry, the echo is hard, but
Actually, brother,
um,
if you want, we can try to figure this out before we continue on, or we can try it on a later date or something, because I know you're having a hard time hearing properly. You're getting that
right,
echo,
right,
and when you have it unplugged, we're getting some major feedback from
right.
somewhere. So, would you prefer to do it another day, book in a couple of days, and
It
see if
might
we
it
can?
might it might not be a bad idea because I'm stumbling over my words a little bit.
Yes, and that's not good. So I think what I'll do is I'll just put a note that we were having technical issues and
Yeah,
we're going to reschedule. I think that would be the best.
yeah. We could try on the phone, or we could reschedule.
Well,
You
if
think
you
it's
want
worth
to
trying?
try switching to the phone,
That might do
and
it.
yeah, let's try that.
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, guys, so we're going to try to bring this back up with the phone. If you've ever had an echo, he was getting himself about a tenth of a second or more later than when he was actually speaking. So you can understand where it's like, what am I saying? Because you're hearing yourself twice. So hopefully when he comes back on the phone, that issue will not have to be there anymore, and we'll be able to carry on with the conversation. Now, Brian, as I was saying, is has things going on around the planet, and one of the things he has is lovemercy.com. Oh, we'll just see if we got
Check.
him back here.
All
How's
right.
that?
So much better.
Okay, I was just mentioning, yeah, if you can turn your phone the quarter turn so we get the landscape view. I was just telling the people about your involvement with Love Mercy, um, and you turned your camera off. But at least you can hear, probably still hear me and that. Oh, there he is. All right,
Yeah.
you're back.
All right.
But yeah,
So
I was just mentioning that you're involved with Love Mercy while you were switching over. So,
yeah.
oh, you're on mute.
The echo is still
It,
happening even in these other headphones. Um, so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what.
You might
You
want to.
stay on, and I'll jump off. Maybe it is something in my system, so I'll jump off. I'll jump back on, and we'll see if that changes it. So, you talk
Okay.
about Love Mercy for a second, and I'll be right back.
Yeah. No problem. Um, so Love Mercy organization is a nonprofit organization out of East Africa, and they have created an organization where their mission is to feed, clothe, and house the poor of the world, right? And in my so the echo went away when you jumped off,
Okay,
and now it's back. Um,
I just
yeah,
muted myself. So, what did it disappear when I was muted?
yeah, it did.
Okay, I'll keep myself muted, and you talk, and then when I want to ask a question, I'll unmute myself. How's that sound?
Okay. Um, I feel like we should almost come back to where we were, where we were getting messed up, the compost pile, right? You know, and the compost is a really amazing experience, making compost. And I have learned so much over the course of my whole time as a farmer, and all of the different aspects of agriculture that I've been involved with. With composting, I've really learned the most, because it teaches you this immense patience, this patience that is in alignment with an understanding that nothing in life is static, right? It's always ever moving and flowing. And the more that we can adapt to that and work with it, the better we're going to get our end result. The compost is going to end up being better. It's going to have the life in it, because you're allowing life to be fluid. We can't force life into submission. It's fluid, it moves, right? And when you can learn that in a compost pile and the more you learn to observe it, is one of the places where you can witness that happening fairly quickly, right? And then you can relay that to other issues that you're dealing with in life or on the farm. That same level of patience and understanding that the way that we're functioning on the farm is not something that is static. It has to flex and move with the way that the farm is going, and with the seasons, and the way that the biology is working with the plant life, and everything above that is working with that, right? And I've been on farms where we got immense floods, huge floods, like 3 feet of water in some of the houses on the farm, and there's nothing that we could do about it, right? and you lose a bunch of animals, and it's this resilience, and something as simple as doing a compost and doing it well is just as amazing as making a really beautiful loaf of bread, or making a beautiful meal, right? And there's this subtle alchemy that's there to the process of how you deal with the materials and how you combine them, and how much time is in between those things. And really, there's, just like with music, there's a lot of meaning in the silence, right? In the space in between, and that's where you can do some really good work in there, you know, and really begin to understand. And for me, it started with my buddy. It started with my best friend out there doing that work, and having none of that understanding, knowing that from that video, that guy Zeke the Sheik, that it was something special, right? It was something that we knew that we needed to be doing. And I haven't stopped doing it. And I still work with all kinds of composters, and compost myself, and has become something that I really have done every farm that I've been on in some capacity, right? And so when we made that big compost pile, then we made a really big garden, and we're in Phoenix, Arizona. And in Phoenix, you can plant tropical fruit trees there. So we had bananas and all of these different things. And my buddies continued on with this, and it's really amazing and lush over there. And people start to ask you for their help, you know, like, can you help me make a garden? Can you show me how to plant a tree, right? And we're doing this 16, 17 years old. And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I was working on a farm part-time, and I was working at a juice bar part-time, and I was shifting gears to doing the farm, more full-time around that time. And a buddy of mine and I, we started a farm together. We started a big farm up near Sedona, about an hour and a half north of Phoenix. And I had no experience, but I learned as I went, and I had a really great mentor, and I learned to use the tractor, and you learn to do things at scale, and running irrigation lines, and making a lot of mistakes, right? But having space to do it. And we never we always were having to work landscaping jobs on the side and doing tree trimming. And then I started to work with apple orchards, and I got a kind of a full-time job working on an apple orchard, but then was also doing the farm, you know, getting up at like 4 in the morning and doing my farm chores, driving off to the orchard, and then working all day and coming back and turn the lights on the tractor and keep going. You know, it's 19, 20 years old, you know, and could do that. And did that really steadily for years, probably 5, 6 years straight, of orchard and the farm, and always, you know, with some buddies on the side doing our caregiver grows and little things like that as well. And doing tree trimming and installing irrigation systems, and having really great people who were more experienced than myself showing me how to do these things, right? And I, before I'd ever taken any classes in it, I had already been actively farming full time for at least 5 years before I ever went to like start taking classes at like the community college and things. And there was a really great program in Yavapai College where we had access to a really nice greenhouse facility, learned nurseries, and took, you know, all of the preliminary agriculture classes and stuff at a community college. And then from there went on and took classes at Oregon State University for permaculture design. And then Chris Trump, I went and studied with him, Nicole Masters, and then I did the online courses with Dr. Laningham as well. But all of that was like after I had already been like, I was doing like versions of Jadam and stuff before I had ever heard about that book. You know, like we had gone and worked over in Africa, and my buddy who I went to Love Mercy with, he had lived over there for 8 years, and he's like, yeah, man, you put those leaves in the bucket, and you know, and like, and there wasn't like, the book didn't exist back then, you know, and I didn't even know what it was. I just knew it was homemade fertilizer, right? And like, and then we were working with EM1, and my same mentor had worked at the facility where they were making EM1 at scale, and he showed me how to do it. And we were making big barrels of it for all the composting we were doing. And we were getting big piles of wood chips dumped and big piles of manure, and doing quite large composting operations on a lot of the farms where I was at. And did that for a long time, up until not that long ago. And the last farm that I was building was in Clarkdale, Arizona, probably, I guess it was a year ago now, because I've been living in California for a year doing consulting out here. And before that, we were building it was a 75-acre property, and we put up about 5 caterpillar tunnels, 100 feet long, 16 feet wide, 20-foot high tunnel, full build out on like a kitchen for washing everything, walk-in coolers, 100 layer hens, 4 mobile chicken coops, like the full deal. And then also they had an established orchard. And I've always, for years, moonlighted on all the different apple orchards and things around Sedona. As I was the youngest guy that knew how to like actually do it well, and was trained by someone that was respected. So they were like, this young guy will work for $15 an hour, you know, get this guy out here, you know. Did that stuff for years, and had a lot of landscape clients, and you know, and was blessed to have some buddies that were, you know, we got involved with the medical program in Arizona, and were able to, you know, have, you know, our little small setup going, and under the caregiver program. And you know, cannabis is a really amazing teacher too. It's been a beautiful teacher in my life. Every different plant that I deal with, and trees especially, have been a really special thing in my life, because when you work with trees, it's a lot different than working with plants, because trees, you work with the same ones from year to year, and you can see like the effects of the pruning you did, and there's a much deeper established energy with a plant, with a tree. And with a plant, by the time it's popping up, you're kind of already starting to let it go. You know, it's like you have to know that that thing is like has its process, and you can't become attached to it, and it's gonna die, and you're gonna harvest that thing at some point, right? You know, and you'll just start some new ones.
I
But a
think I know
tree,
where our problem with the audio is. You have another set of headphones or something in the kitchen. I can hear her moving around in the kitchen. So there's
okay,
something in the kitchen that's attached to the audio.
okay, that might be it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm hearing her fairly clearly in the kitchen, moving around. So there's something in there. There's a speaker source in that kitchen that's attached somehow to your headphones or something. But I'll mute back off again. But that's, I
It's
would say
messy.
that's where our problem actually is something.
Headphones. Turn your headphones off, sweetie. Off, please.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Did that help now?
I
Is the
think that
echo
we
gone?
might. I think it is.
Okay. Well,
Good,
there.
good, good catch there. But that's kind of my spiel of what I've been up to for the past 12 years. I've just been working on a lot of different farms and learning a whole lot, because the stuff goes wrong on the farm all the time. You learn all kinds of stuff you didn't think you were going to learn, and is incredibly humbling. You know,
Yeah.
it's and the big guiding force for me is I read when I think I was 19 by the time I read One Straw Revolution. And One Straw Revolution has been a really powerful like guiding force for me in my direction in life, because of the quote, um, the ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, it's the cultivation and perfection of human beings, right? The process of doing the work can make us stronger, right? It can, and doing that can empower others, and that flows through the whole system. And that's been what I've tried to do everywhere where I've been. And working on apple orchards, I learned a lot because my teacher was incredibly meticulous about the process of how we did it, and quite strict in the way that I did it, especially early on
Don't
in my
louse it up, boy.
and and but it was really unique because not on any big apple orchard are you going to actually truly tree ripen a piece of fruit, right? Like we would leave the apples to the point where they were at perfection before we would pick them, and literally like go look like, oh, that one needs like 2-3 more days, I'll come back for that apple, right? Instead of grabbing it then. And you there's so much nuance in the care of how we tend to plants or tend to life, that we can get a different kind of result. And it's been this one step after another where I've kind of gotten to where I am now. It's just kind of been not completely planned, but I've always known where I was going and what I wanted to do. And a big part of that is setting the right intentions, having like a sense of mission, right?
Yeah.
What is my mission in life? And when I started to learn about holistic management, I started to think about that a lot more, because now because I know what my mission is, I can align everything I do with it, right? Now I can
Yeah.
ask myself the question, is this moving me closer or further away, right? And we don't often ask that on the farm. Things get so busy, and all of these unpredictable things happen, that we often don't ask the question, like, why are we doing this, right? And that's exactly what a really great mission statement can do, is when you're in those times of like, man, this is crazy, why am I doing this again? The answer is right there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's,
exactly. Yeah.
and um, that's each one of these little pieces that I've found along the way. It's been this kind of like a scavenger hunt in a lot of ways of like each job I've worked and each person that I've worked with has
Yeah.
all shaped my skill set to be able to do what I'm doing now. Wouldn't be anywhere without a lot of help,
Well,
a
no,
lot
no,
of really
no,
great
no.
mentors.
You have to give yourself credit, okay?
Oh yeah,
Because
sure.
if you weren't willing to learn, if you weren't willing to put in the time to pay
Right,
attention,
right,
then those men and women, etc., would never have been able to bring you to this point because you wouldn't have been there in the first place. You wouldn't have started a compost pile at 16 years old with your buddy. Okay,
right.
face it. Now, there is a question in the chat that I know you can answer, or I hope you can answer because it's about apple trees. Is it true that apple trees only produce fruit every second year? A friend told me that, but I'm not sure.
That is true. So they won't necessarily not make a crop, but they get a heavy year and a light year, right? And
Okay.
knowing that when you plan out an apple orchard, you plant the trees in certain varieties, and you know that you're going to have certain varieties on an off year, and then vice versa, right? Because an
Ah,
apple orchard is
okay.
apple orchards are tend to be vertically integrated where they make cider, right? They make other products, and good cider has sweet and tart apples in it. You need both, right? So when you're planning out an apple orchard, knowing that there is that kind of off year, you have to balance it out where you always have varieties that are sweet and tart, and are able to make a really great cider, because cider that has just one kind of apple in it or just sweet or just tart is okay, but it's nothing like one that has a handful of varieties with a good balance of both. So that's absolutely is true. That apple trees especially they alternate years.
Okay.
Peach trees and like other stone fruits, they'll get fruit every year, but they live a much shorter lifespan. So an apple tree or a pear or a quince, those can live 100 years plus and still be
Yeah.
producing fruit, where a peach tree starts to go way downhill at about 25, 30 years old. They start to deteriorate a little bit because they're exerting so much energy producing fruit every year. If the weather will let them, they'll make fruit every year, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, they don't live as long.
Now she says that that makes sense. I have an apple tree singular beside 100-foot evergreen tree. Poor thing only gets morning light in the shade of this big tree. She was also saying she has a huge crabapple tree that she lets the birds eat the crab apples. Thank you, silly Lily. Thank you. The birds thank you.
Right. Crab apples are really good to include in cider. A lot of the crab apples are traditional like hard cider varieties because they add a certain kind of stringent um, kind of tartness to it, where it's
Flavor.
has yeah
Yeah.
it's a certain bitterness that adds to the alcohol sometimes.
Yeah. Now, let's take it up to the next level. We've
Yeah,
talked about your past, where you've gotten started.
yeah.
Where are you now? What are you doing now in the world in general? And then I'd like you to get a little more specific to the US.
Yeah. Um, so right now, most of my time I'm doing soil testing through my consulting business, Earth Grower. Um, so we do microbial soil testing. We also do full baseline reports where we'll do chemical analysis, also physical testing, where we can generate a full baseline look at the soil. So we have done this for a lot of different farms. I helped a couple farms be able to get grants using the testing that I have. the approach that I use, because most grants now require the full baseline approach with physical, chemical, and biological properties in the reports. I also do a lot of biology testing for big compost facilities all over California. But I look at a lot of other people's stuff for fun as well. And but I do a lot of follow-up testing as well. So farms that I've already worked with, they're on a rhythm of sending me samples, and the same thing with the compost facilities. I'm looking at stuff on a pretty regular basis for those guys. And I do on-site consultations as well. So we go out to the farms and take the samples, and while we're there, if they want to do other consultation on the farm, we can do that. I'll take a look at the fruit trees or help look at the systems to make sure that they're working efficiently, or where there's room for improvement. I'm a good extra set of eyes on the farm. Sometimes when we're on the farm and so in it, we can put up blinders and we can't really fully see where we may be bottlenecked or there may be waste. And that's something that I do for farms. I
A fresh
also,
pair of eyes is always better, especially somebody of your experience, being basically doing this since you were 16 years old and having all this training and being a consultant. You can go in and you see the problems that nobody else sees because you've dealt with it before, or you just have that beautiful mind that can see and go, hey guys, have you seen this over here?
right. Yeah, so I'll do a lot of that. And then we will help build hoop houses and stuff for farms all the time. So that's kind of like the bulk of my consulting business. But we will do full permaculture designs and things when people desire those, and other mapping and things as well. Uh, Design irrigation systems. I design full processing rooms and stuff for the post-harvest, pre-harvest, nurseries, help people select materials, a lot of things like that. But when farms are interested in it, so the thing that's unique about my soil reports is I can tailor them to JADAM or to KNF, or where we're not just, I'm taking traditional reports and taking a lens to them where we can make this for natural farming, right?
Right.
And that's a pretty unique approach. There are other consultants that do this, right? Leighton being one of them, and other great consultants. But that's kind of been my approach. Is if you're a traditional farmer and you want to use the stuff that you're buying, or you want to try to get away from the stuff we're buying, like, yeah, I can look at your reports and we can come up with something, and we can kind of ease you out of it if that's what you want to do. Or I can give you some alternatives, different things like that. Or if you want to go full on, like you want to make all your own stuff, like, yeah, let's go down that rabbit hole, and I can help
Right.
you with reports that are going to fit your context to do that, right? And what I do for compost facilities a lot of the time is I help them to identify where they're lacking in the predators. So with nematodes, protozoa is a big thing. It's a lot easier to get fungi into a compost pile than it is to get the right nematodes and protozoa sometimes. And sometimes it's just adding an inoculum of maybe someone else's compost if you don't have it, or identifying places on your property where you might be able to find some of that biology, right? And so I'll help to kind of tailor that with people's composting, and also I can help them to tailor their approach on how they make the compost. So their system of making compost, a lot of the time, there's a lot of room for improvement, especially in the staging of the materials. There's a lot that can be done there to speed up the process or improve upon it. And then often people don't think about, where am I going to put the compost? How is it stored? How do
Mhm.
you cure it properly? So this is just farming 101. Like, you need to have a place to start, and then what's the end point, right? So
Yeah.
what pre and post harvest when you're growing veg is the most important, right? But then you're growing cannabis, of course, where you're starting your clones, and you can't mess that cure up, right? So it's on both ends, right? And the compost is the same way. And I'll look at systems. A lot of people are lacking in, they don't have a mom pile, they don't have a mother culture for their compost, right? And they have no set recipe or protocol on how they stage materials before they compost, right? So a way that I think of it, so in French cooking, you set all of your things before you make them. You cut up your onions, you put them in the
Yeah.
little dishes, and you get everything set up. And then when you cook, you're cooking, you're focused on cooking, and you can execute well and with precision, right? And you can do that on any aspect of the farm as well. And composting is a prime example of this, right? And when we can perfect that, you can make it a lot more efficient, so it doesn't take a bunch of time and get better results. But then also people are really lacking in the curing phase of the compost, right? Okay, I've made the compost, it went through my bin system or whatever system I'm using. Now what, right?
Yeah.
Of course you apply it and you use it, but if you're making a lot of it, you need a place to stage it. And that's where the compost really starts to come into its own and really get this correct biology in the right numbers and really get great fungi growing in it, is in the curing phase, the mesophilic phase of the compost, where all of that other life is coming in. And majority of the time, especially on big facilities, like that's not happening, right?
So are you
And
proponent of adding worms into the compost and making it a vermicompost?
I think that that's a really great method. Yeah, adding worms after you've gone through the the cooking phase, getting heat spikes and everything, and you're in the mesophilic phase, you can start to add in those earthworms and add in other biology, or add in inoculums of teas and
Yeah.
things that do have the biology you're looking for. It's a really great time to do it. But when you do it, be careful to watch the temperatures, because you go and put some JLF or you put something on a
Oh
pile.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those temps are going to spike, and
Yeah.
you got to really watch that stuff closely. A little bit goes a long way. And I tend to use more like compost extracts and things when I'm trying to add in nematodes. Like, I'm going to take from a pile that I know has them, right? And I'm going
Yeah.
to just put them in there. And the so there's a lot of nuance to it. So that's a big part of what I do for compost facilities. I'll look at their stuff under the microscope and give them tips on where they can improve, and work with quite a few doing that. And then um, other things that we're working on currently, I'm launching 2 startups right now. So we're starting a tech platform called Restore. It's launching very soon. And then I'm also launching a carbon credit development company called Zuma. So that's a lot of what's happening behind the scenes. But I right now, majority of my business is doing soil testing and doing the on-site consultations with farms, to just help them improve their systems, and to save and to eliminate waste, or turn waste into an energy source, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and a lot of what I'm doing, so that's here in the US, is what I'm doing
Right.
a
Yeah.
lot there, right? But then we're launching this carbon credit development company, and we're working with a lot of different farms in a lot of different regions now, doing kind of the same thing, identifying where there is waste and turning that into an energy source that's valuable, right?
Yeah.
And and identifying where there's places where we can improve on those kinds of systems, right? And then with the technology company that we're starting, we're creating tools that can facilitate that same type of thing, make it easier to stay organized and to have some built-in incentive in the way that we do it, right? And so that's a big part of what I've been working on this past year. We finished up building the farm, and I came out here and we were helping to develop an app called Crop Swap. And it was a produce trading application. It was much like Uber Eats for farmers,
Okay.
right? And I came onto that team, you know, to be the farmer eyes on like, will this actually work well for farmers, right? And then how can we improve it for them? And that's what I'm doing now has evolved from that, right? It was kind of this next phase in my evolution of what are the trends of the world. I know that we need to use technology to bridge the gap here, and it's a powerful tool that can be a teacher to get people maybe back to nature through the technology, right? And so I came out to California when we were building this app, Crop Swap, and it's now turned into these couple other projects that we're doing. And the whole time, though, I'm still doing the consulting, and we're selling T-shirts, and we work with tree planting organizations to do that. And we launched a coloring book that we're distributing to a few different, you know, homeschoolers and different youth groups and stuff all over the place, and that's been really cool. And just been kind of enjoying life. You know, being out here in California has been a lot different for me because it's the first time in a long time that I don't have to wake up and like do a bunch of chores around the farm, you know, and 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 it's very bizarre. It's a weird thing, you know, to not have to do that for me, and but I'm enjoying it, and we live right near the beach, and it's been a really cool thing, and um, when we first came out here, I went and, you know, I had a called up Leighton and went and had a slice of pizza with him in Malibu, and, you know, to meet him for the first time in person, you know, and
Right on.
that was really great. And it's been LA is a weird place. It's a unique place though, you know, and because I spent the last 10 years living in a small town, working on a lot of farms, and had mentors that brought me over to Africa and exposed me to these other things. But we were living in a little tiny town in Arizona, you know, and everybody knows everybody. And to be out here is kind of a new, neat experience, though. I did
It's
live in
called
California
culture
before.
shock. It,
Yeah,
what it's called is culture shock. Yeah.
right. But I'm enjoying it. You know, it's here because there's so many people. You can kind of disappear in that, right? Where when you're in a small town, you go into the grocery store, you're going to see five people you know, and then you go to the coffee shop and you see two people you just saw at the grocery store, you know.
Come on, have coffee.
Right. Yeah, but it's been a wild ride, and my work over in Africa was, you know, is one of those kind of pivotal moments in your life where you talk culture shock. I mean, man,
Oh yeah.
that's for sure what happened. But it also is, it was a really unique experience because I felt like when I went there, I could stay there, right? It felt like it opened up and it felt like home.
Yeah.
And not everywhere feels that way, right? You know, when you travel around, you're like, yeah, I can stay here for a little while. This is cool, you know. Oh, this is neat, but I want to go home, right? And like,
Yeah.
but when I was there, it was like, man, I could stay here for a long time because the way of life is so different. You know, it's very I don't know. It was a really profound experience to and a deep understanding of like, oh, whoa, okay, there's a lot of ways to live life. Like, okay, right?
Yeah.
You know, and but it was really neat because when I came out, my business partner at the time had already lived in Africa for like 8 years, right? And he'd gotten a bunch of things going already. And so we were going around and looking at all the things that he'd already done. And he's like, okay, what do you think, Brian? How could we take this to the next level? What is the next phase of what we're going to do here, right?
Hmm.
And I spent 3 months over there the first time, you know, going and visiting a bunch of properties and going to children's homes and digging wells and really just being deeply involved in the work, right? And there is there's a desperate amount of work that needs to be done here in the United States. So don't get me wrong. We need a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with a community of people that walks like a mile to get water, when you can provide them with water and they don't have to walk that far, it's a profound experience to see what that like really means to people. Like people are carrying their water. You know, here we get it no problem, right? And
Go to
it's
the tap.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and for me as a young guy experiencing that it really hit home for me. It was really like, wow,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that really need help in this world. And there's a lot of problems, right? There's a lot of problems with the way that we deal with waste. There's a lot of problems with the way we get water and how we grow food. And with each of these problems, I've kind of gotten at the point in my life and the development of my journey where I see all these problems as opportunities. You know, it's there. Man, that's a problem. Like we could come up with a way to try to fix that, right? You know,
Yep.
like, and it's taken a long time for my mind to kind of get to that point. When you're younger, and I'm still a really young guy. I mean, come on, but when I was younger, I would kind of fixate on different pieces of like the puzzle, right? And you kind of really learn that one well. And now I've kind of gathered enough of them, and I'm continuing to gather more all the time, that you can kind of start to see things a little clearer, right? Of like how this could all work, right? What is the thing we can do that makes the most difference and takes the least amount of energy, right? Like, and there's always is that point in any system. When are we doing too much work and when are we not doing enough, right? And there's a sweet spot. There always is. And when we can find that sweet spot in any kind of system, that's where the magic is. That's where we can find value. That's something that we can influence and control, right? We can't control any aspect of life, but we can certainly influence it. And when we can point at the right place to influence it, now we've got something powerful, right? And that's when I look at biology, it's the same thing, right? When you consider
Yeah.
quorum sensing, you're able to influence biology by introducing other biology, right? So what is the biology that you want to introduce that's going to get the party jumping, that's going to make this happen in a more efficient way or make others work well together, right? So in a sports team, there's always someone in the sports team that makes the others work well together, right? That's what makes a great sports team, is when everyone empowers each other to be stronger, right? And when we can start to understand the way that these complex systems work and how they influence and interconnect with one another, we can then pinpoint that and introduce someone that's going to make someone else work better. But it starts to get really sticky when we think that we actually understand that, right?
Oh hell no. We're shooting from the hip and we're hoping something hits the barn wall.
Yeah, that's for sure. But we can see results, right? And we know that there's certain fundamental truths from
Yep.
the abundance of open source experience that's available at this point, of
Yep.
what certainly does not work and what you've got a chance with. And that's where life becomes really interesting, when we can see on a macro level what we can affect that's going to influence the rest of it. When we influence the biology, it influences the plants and so on and
Yep.
so forth, right? And where it gets super interesting is when we realize that we're part of that, right? Like we tend to think that that's like something separate of us, right? And that we like observe it. And that's not actually how it works. we are very much part of it.
Our energy.
And yeah, our energy, and it's in our sphere. We interact with it. We breathe the same air as all of that stuff. We trample upon it. We walk through it. We influence it, right? And that's something that has also kind of been this guiding principle in my life, is realizing that I am part of this bigger complex system of, and that just like that biology works together, like people like me, we can work together with each other, right? And have a spirit of collaboration where people are empowering and making each other stronger, right? And through doing the work with nature, we could maybe learn to do that, right? We could learn to do that better through mimicking what we see nature doing, right? And because it is working in immense collaboration, but of course there's competition, you know, but healthy competition, and rarely ever is, unless something invasive was introduced into a certain ecosystem, it tends to be relatively copacetic, where there's death, but it's the right amount of death, right? Where
Yeah.
it cycles back through. And um, that's happening on all levels, right? And that's a really hard thing to grasp, you know, when we're living in a world that's, in many ways, is entirely the opposite of that, right? And
Yeah.
um, when I go work with farmers, in a lot of ways, like I'm trying to relay this message to them, because when you realize that the life in the soil, and all of the overlying ecology in many ways, like, is you know, you are
Yep.
the same thing, right? Why would you ever spray poison on that? You know, why would you ever do a lot of these things when you realize that it's pretty much the same thing as spraying that poison in your mouth, or, you know, and
Yep.
um, and but that's a really hard thing to learn if that's not your current worldview, right? And that's very much what it is. It's a certain way of seeing the world, and there's different aspects of life, of how each one of us is choosing to look at it, right? And that's part of the problem, is we have people who can see the way that I'm speaking of it, and then there's everyone else that sees it the other way, right? And there's this inherent duality, but right at that point of tension, duality right there, that's the magic point where we can make a difference in
Yeah.
the way that we do things. We have a choice in the way that we live in this world, and we highly influence it. And things in the garden, compost, all of these different things we're talking about are incredible places where we can see that sped up in real time, and we can witness this happening and try to learn from it. And that's been something that I've tried to do my whole experience with this, is I want to learn from this, right? I want to
Yeah.
become stronger from this, so that I could maybe help someone else, right? And like, that's really the whole point, because if you're in this agriculture scene, you know, it's a challenging thing, right? And like, you need to have a sense of mission, and that's really what has kept me with it, is a sense of mission, and also like the dynamic nature of it, where you can learn about so many different aspects of it, where you really, like, there is no end to it, right? And because I really like that about it, because I can research all these different pieces and then start to put them together myself. And that dynamic nature and a sense of importance and in the work, as what is really drove me to like keep going and try to progress, and try to share with others. um,
Yeah.
it's been a really beautiful experience.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted you to come on the show, and you wanted to come on the show, because that's that passion. And that's your driving force. That's your why you get up in the morning. That's why for years you got up and did chores, and now you actually miss it, you know. We do have a couple of questions
Yeah,
from Silly Lily.
yeah.
Um, Actually, this is more of a statement, but there's an area on my acreage that nothing would grow, not even weeds. It's only coming back 10 years later. I don't know what the previous owner sprayed. Any
Um,
guesses?
well, that's really hard to say. Like you can do testing, to see what it was, what happened there, but likely, um, it sounds like it was got really, really compacted by something, and when there's nothing at all growing, not even weeds, that's when it starts becoming concerning of what has happened on a piece of land, right? The weeds tell us a whole lot. The weeds
Yeah,
are telling us a story of what the land is hungry for, what it needs, what may have happened to it. So an example of what may have happened to it is a lot of the time where there's some type of contamination on land, there will be thorny plants like milk thistles and things growing on it because they're naturally detoxifying. You take milk thistle to detox your organs in your body, does the same thing for the earth. So if you see something like that growing, yeah, there might be something nasty in the soil because the weeds grow up to address the issues of the soil. That really
yeah,
is their purpose, other than a lot of them are a source of medicine as well. But um, if nothing was growing, likely it was like high disturbance and maybe compaction, maybe equipment went over it pretty heavily, or there could have been something gnarly sprayed on there. And it depends,
yeah,
how old's the land. The era of what was sprayed has changed over time. Like back in like the 40s and 50s, I mean, there was some really gnarly stuff being sprayed. Now Roundup is really gnarly, but it's not. I mean, it's kind of banned. They've replaced it with something very similar.
yeah.
um,
She's saying
but
it's where the fire pit area was. I think he sprayed to keep weeds down.
that makes
So,
sense.
and
Yeah,
she'd
that makes
actually
sense.
asked the question, which you kind of touched on, for the testing. How many areas on a 3 acre property should I do when it comes to soil testing? I think, and that's where the Roundup area and what doesn't grow. But for the base question of 3 acre property, how many soil tests you think you would want to take?
So it depends. It depends on what you're growing and how the different areas are sectioned out. So say there's a pasture and an orchard and a garden. I may do 3 tests because they're different context, right? And I'm going to tailor what I'm going to do differently, and maybe it's been treated
Right.
a little differently. But in general, like per acre, I probably take 25 core samples, across the acreage, and I'll put them all into a bucket. 25 to 50, you could do more, um, and 6-inch cores, and then I'll mix those up into a bucket. And that's an aggregate sample. It's kind of an average of the area. And then
Right.
you'll take that, and if you were to send it to me, 2 cups, 2, 3 cups. Different labs have varying amounts of the amount you would send to them. Um, but usually you would take an aggregate sample over an area, um, and depending on how many different kind of zones you have, whether it's orchard or vineyard or however it's separated, I would get tests for probably each one of them because I would treat each one of them a little bit differently.
Yeah, she's saying she has a treed area, a large lawn, and then an area where she wants to grow a big veggie garden. So
Yeah,
that's
so
three different basically areas. Like one's a treed. So you were talking or mentioned the difference between what you need for trees to what you would need to for vegetables. So I would say if and I'm at what basically I'm going to say it and see if I'm half-assed right is she would want three, one for each area.
yeah, I would say so, and then it's a matter of you know maybe you don't need one for the lawn. How's the lawn look? Maybe you don't
Yeah.
want to spend the money on the lawn. But in the other areas, yeah, it makes sense. And when you're starting in like a brand new garden, sometimes it's better to do even a little more testing, like maybe some heavy metals testing, especially if you live in an old home where there may have been lead paint on the home at some time. That stuff ends up in the soil around the house, right? And those are things to think about if you live in like the city and stuff as well, where there's a bunch of stuff in the soil from the construction. There could be
Yeah.
some contaminants or heavy metals in there that are worth checking at least, once, right? And then I tend to want to do a full chemical, full biological, and then also physical testing. The most basic physical testing is to just get out there and dig a hole and look at the soil and feel it. Dump a gallon of water in there and set a timer. See how quickly it drains. See how it feels wet. Those are really simple things. We can smell it. I don't tend to taste soil until I've done some testing on it. But
I don't
you can
blame you
take,
for that one.
but you can tell a lot tasting if it's not bad soil. Um, but that's the kind of the most basics is like dig a hole, look at what's going on, and then in one spade of soil, in really amazing soil, shoot, there could be like 50 earthworms in one spade. So
Hmm.
count how many worms are in there and then write it down, and now you have a metric to track. Go in a random spot next time, dig a hole and see if there's more worms than there were last time, right? And that's a really good sign of improvement in a living system. Is are there higher level predators? Are there worms in there? Are you seeing other stuff? And that's something really basic that doesn't cost anything to do, and that's where I start when I go out on properties. We do that first, right? And get that basic understanding of what's going on. And that's what's been really cool about the coloring book that we made. We kind of made exactly what I just explained, but for kids, right? With worksheets and and stuff
Cool.
associated with it, where people can go do what I'm talking about, dig a hole, or basic jar test where you can put some sand, put the soil in there, shake it up, let it sit, and the layers of sand, silt, and clay will separate. And then you know what kind of soil you have. And you can use all of the information that's available to understand your soil better, right? And there's really simple things we can do, but the lab analysis goes even deeper, and microscope even deeper. And when what I'm doing is I'm taking kind of all of it and tailoring it to the lens of what a property needs, and that's based on what the owner tells me. Like, what's your budget? How much time do you have? What are you really trying to do here? What's your crop? And let's figure out what's going to save you the most money, but what's going to get you the results you need, right? And
Yeah, exactly. And the coloring book, Lily says that's a great idea. Start them young. And Natalia is, can we get a copy? And I think they're
yeah,
available on your website and through your LinkedIn, right? Or your link tree.
yeah, if you hit the link tree thing, there's a link right there for the coloring book. Yeah, it's available right now.
So I'll give them your I'm looking for your Instagram would probably be easy.
Earth
And
underscore grower.
yeah, and then um the other person is coming from LinkedIn. Is it available through your LinkedIn? Is there
Um,
something there they can go through?
if they go to LinkedIn, it'll take you to my website, and then you can
Okay.
get it there. But there's a link tree, that's just kind of
Yeah.
in the
On
Instagram there. It's
Instagram.
there, and
Yeah.
you can find it there. You can find it under merch on the website. It's right there. Yeah, so yeah, we're pretty excited about the coloring book. We've got a few people that are already using it with some youth groups and stuff, and it's been a cool thing. That we've been really excited about.
Oh, fantastic. And that's the thing, like Silly Lily had said, is start them young and get them, like you started at 16, and the younger we can start the kids to find the balance within themselves, within the soil, within our environment itself. And that's what you are really teaching is the understanding of the entire system that we live in and exist in. And I am like so thankful that there are men and women out there like you who have this deep passion, that are willing to give of their time and their energy and teach, and because there's not enough people with your understanding, and we need more. And that's where, do you do classes other than, like, you've got your counseling, but do you do classes for kids or anything like that, that people can reach out to you and have you come and speak at an event?
Yeah, yeah. So I used to work at a nonprofit farm, and we did a lot of classes there all the time, a ton with kids, and that was kind of like the last time I was doing like more official classes were kind of under the banner of this nonprofit that I was working with at the time called Eco Farm. But I definitely speak at events, and I set up small workshops with people. Um, it's usually like it's I don't usually even like it's not an advertised thing. It's like someone wants a group of 5, 10 people out at the farm, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I definitely do that. We were gonna do a course out in Virginia, and we just couldn't get enough interest in it a little while back. But yeah, I mean, I definitely do that kind of stuff for people. But right now, I don't have any kind of like official schedule for courses or anything like that. But I'm certainly do big groups and things, and I've talked at several different events, and can prepare speeches and all that kind of stuff. But but right now it's mainly the consultation. It's kind of more like one-on-one, or maybe like 3, 4 people, like the team comes along, kind of
Yeah.
consultations. And we a lot of the time we're walking around the farm. I want to look at everything. We'll dig around, dig holes, and look at the trees, and talk as we go. And I like to tease out little things around the farm and point things out, and use a lot of analogies and things like that to try to help people understand and make it engaging. And that's really what we pick a couple key teachers that we gave the coloring book to initially, because something like the materials we put together, a great teacher can really make that something really special for kids. Where if it's kind of like there's no passion behind the way it's delivered to the kids, that
Yeah.
it's lacking. It's just an activity book. But you can really bring these activities to life with a teacher that's really engaging with the kids and really does something special.
And
And
has some understanding inside of
sure.
themselves for the truth of it and what's going on. And that's where
Yeah,
the choosing the teachers you gave it to originally, that's magnificent, because then you're getting a better judgment on how it affects the children. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're pretty much out of time, but I like to ask if you could give advice to the next generation coming up. What would be your one thing that really you would want to share out of your life and your experiences to help the younger generation?
Um, the number one thing that I've learned along the way um, is you really need to learn to document everything that you do. Um, Keep a journal, take a lot of photos, like really learn to document what you're doing well, because you can look back at it and you can improve upon it. You can learn from your mistakes. Um, and nowadays, everyone documents everything on social media. It's, we're documenting, but definitely keeping a journal of, especially when you're learning new skills, keeping a specific journal on the new skills you're trying to do, and being able to track your progress is something that's really important. as we progress and learn new skills, and we try to analyze complex systems in the world around us, being able to look back and reflect on where we've been and where we're headed, and when we write something, now that's something tangible. I'm all for documenting on the computer and typing. You should do that too. Spreadsheets are really helpful as well, but physically writing something with a pen on a piece of paper, that's pretty close to real now. You can touch that, that's a physical thing now. And
Yep.
that would probably be my number one thing that I've learned is, and I'm continuing to learn to do better all the time, is to document what you're doing, and to really sit and ask the question of where are you going, right? If you can document what you're doing and you have a pretty good idea where you're going, at least a North Star. You don't have to know exactly where you're going, but like something to point at, and a good trust in your gut's feelings and your instincts. Those are really great things. Like keep your mind straight with the journal, and trust your instincts, and have a North Star to point at, and somewhere out there there's some meaning in this life, right?
Yeah.
And
Find your lodestone and find your passion. And it's amazing what a person can accomplish when they have a passion that drives them to get up every morning and to continually do and learn. And you're admitting that you're still learning and growing. And most people, well, not most, a lot of people, they just get this tunnel vision where it's just them. It's they've accomplished this. Now listen to me because I know this. The willingness for you to grow and expand and experience and give that to us is, as for me, it's a joyful thing to watch. And listening to you today and hearing you giggle and laugh in those moments where you got that extra little juice there, that's really a passionate thing. And I don't know, where your partner is right now, but you guys are fantastic. And I want to thank you for helping not only me understand some of this stuff, because I'm still learning as well, but our audience and the people in the future that are going to watch this, it's type, I'm sorry, it's your type of personality that makes a real difference for people, because they can see somebody that has been successful, that has followed their passion, and they can do it too. And you bring that in spades, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Really
And
appreciate
hopefully
it.
we can have you back,
Yeah.
and we won't have any tech issues on the front end.
Right.
And maybe you can be somewhere and doing a presentation, and you can bring us along for your presentation one day.
We could do that. Yeah,
I think
that'd be
that'd be
great.
fantastic.
All right.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to end the broadcast, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We love you all. We want you all to be successful, to get in touch with your inner passion, to bring your inner passion to the world and help others, because that is the most satisfying feeling that I've ever had, is when I'm able to help somebody else. So reach out a hand, help the people, help the soil, help the plants, help our entire species. We love you all, and you guys all have a wonderful day.